This is the LoinersView podcast.
This is the LoinersView podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to this week's LoinersView. I'm Laurie, your host, and with me this week we have three individuals who all know a lot about rugby league. First of all, we've got Jordan. Hi mate.
Hi Lars, you alright?
Not so bad. And with making his first appearance on the show, we have Johnny. Welcome along, Johnny.
How's it going?
Not so bad. And with us this week we have a writer, a broadcaster on Rugby League Backchat, which is on Free Sport, and, well, I believe a Halifax fan. So the good old facts again on appearing on this show. And he is Mr. Matthew Shaw. Hello, Matt.
I can't believe you just outed me like that.
I do apologise.
I've got to be
mate.
impartial.
Don't worry, we'll edit that. No.
It's all right. I don't think it's much of a secret anymore.
Don't worry. I mean, everyone's a Halifax fan, really. So
it's a great away day, isn't it? Great away day.
I tell you what, I remember in that Super 8s when Leeds were in it. Not that you guys like to be reminded of that. So I don't work Mondays. So Sunday night I tend to the work again, go back, do what I need to do and go out. And I went to the old post office in Halifax and I got there and I've never seen it as busy, and it was heaving with both Leeds and Halifax fans. It was a very, very messy night, that one.
Is that where we went?
Yeah, that's where we was, mate. You were probably drinking with us.
Probably
the drum after the game.
Yeah. It was good doing the post office. Do you get your free shots? They normally give free shots.
Plenty of free shots.
Oh yeah, they were handing them out.
What a place.
It is the best away day in rugby league as well. The best, yeah, it is probably the best.
It's up there. It's up there with the best we've had recently.
Oh, definitely. Right, so this week, there's been quite a few rugby league news stories. This man who is our guest this week has broken quite a few. So let's talk about the one that's kind of been out on the news networks on Twitter today. Possibly Super League may be coming back on the 2nd of August. So, Matt, give us a lowdown. What have you heard? What have you had any inklings about? What's the breakdown of the news story from you?
So what I was told at the minute, there's a big meeting on Friday, and they're basically going to finalise plans for the season. There's a couple of main talking points. One is live November, December. They want to know about promotion relegation. Don't think they'll find out that tomorrow though. But then how they start the season. Now Super League have put 3 proposals together, but the one that they seem to prefer at the minute is the prospect of a triple header at Headingley on the 2nd of August to get everyone up and raring to go. So Leeds play, off the top of my head, Leeds play Huddersfield, Hull KR play Toronto, and St Helens play Catalan. And that's where they're at. But because I put that out there, no doubt they'll go for one of the other options, making me look like, well, I say making me look like it.
I mean, yeah.
Well, also we should know more. We should know more in Friday evening. We should know what's going on.
I mean, it's been quite a long time. Well, we've had quite a long time to wait. I mean, how much of an impact is the season going to have in, it's going to be over what? We're reckoning by the end of November. It's going to be a very short season crammed in a lot of games. It's going to be a very intense period, isn't it, for everybody?
Yeah, it is. But I think, unfortunately, we're not in a perfect situation, are we? COVID has put us in anything is an imperfect situation. So you've got to find the least worst option. And I think ultimately that's what the sport is trying to do at the minute. Look, it is a lot of games. There's no doubt about that. I feel for players because not only are players then going to have a short pre-season going into next season, and then have next season and go into a World Cup, which will then mean a short pre-season for the year after and another full season as well. So I can see players being seriously burnt out by the end of 2022. I don't know what the solution is though, because ultimately, the sport to get back on the field because of Sky. Can't blame Sky. A lot of money into the sport. They need some cover. They've been very generous in what they've done this year. We're not taking any money off them. There are some rebates next year, but it's nowhere near as I thought it would be. So all in all, I think, yeah, it's not perfect, it's not ideal, but it's making the best of a bad situation, I think.
Jordan, for instance, how do you feel? I mean, obviously, we've talked about this on the past on the show. Is this going to be good for the fans having this many games? I mean, do you think, how is Sky going to give it to the customers? Do you think, are we going to get all the games shown or most of the games? What would you want as a fan for this period of time?
I think we will get to see all of them, yeah. Be it some on Sky, some via like online streaming services and things like that. I think while the fans aren't allowed in the stadium, which hopefully might only be for a couple of months when the season restarts, and maybe by October we can come back in. But until then, I think one way or another, you are going to be able to watch, which is ideal for me, really, living up here and being a Leeds fan. I don't always get to come down every single week, so yeah, I'm quite happy if I got to watch every week.
Johnny, this one's to you. Do you think how much of an impact, if you're a fan who's going to be obviously trying to go every week? Oh,
We lost him.
That question.
oh, we do apologise. Just some technical difficulties with Jonathan, our friend today, who's just disappeared. We'll put this to you guys. In terms of where the sport goes, can you see this being a bit of a, not disaster, but an impact of how much coverage the game gets, given how much we're going to be trying to fit in a short space of time?
Yeah, sure. Go on, Jordan.
I think we've possibly missed a boat in getting in there first to get some media coverage and stuff. Like, had we come back a bit earlier, which logistically probably wasn't possible, which is why we haven't done it. But had they found a way to get in there before football and stuff like that started, we wouldn't have got lost in the shuffle, so to speak. Because by August, Super League's going to be starting again at the same time as a Champions League in that mini tournament they're doing to crown that off. So I don't think it'll make a massive, sort of splash with it in terms of media coverage. I mean, what do you think, Matthew?
I think the fact they come back in August when the Premier League's wrapping up, I think there's maybe 2 weekends of Premier League left. You've got to remember that Sky don't show Champions League, it's BT.
Yeah.
So Sky aren't going to be pushing the Champions League. You would hope that Sky would be pushing Super League quite hard because there's no sign of the Rugby Union return yet. They've been more shambolic than Rugby League has.
It's a change.
Yeah. So, you look at their calendar. So I think there is potential for it to have a fairly big impact. But again, as is always the case, the sport has to push that. They have to drive that. They can't expect Sky to drive it because history tells us that it won't work like that. So we will see. But it's probably not as bad that it's starting later than it could have been. Look, it'd been better if it started before Premier League, but it was never going to happen. And financially, logistically, it was happen. So August isn't the worst time.
The other thing that we heard on last week when we had Ryan Brearley on the show was the impact on the players, because obviously they barely, we've seen a couple of Rhinos players training together this week, but in terms of the actual teams as a whole getting together, they're not going to have a huge amount of time to get back to full fitness. How much of an impact is that going to have on the players themselves? We'll call it a pre-season, because obviously it's not a massive amount of time. How much pressure are they going to be on?
We'll see a lot more injuries, unfortunately, I think, because as Ryan said last week, and as I've alluded to a couple of times as well, you're going to need some time to get up to speed of taking that contact all the time. Now, if the players are coming back and into such an intense period of, possibly 2 games a week, and they're not ready for that contact, and they haven't had the necessary levels of training, there are going to be injuries. It's something that we really need to be mindful of and see if there's any way we can sort of protect that, really.
It's certainly going to be a worry, I think, for a few people. One of the stories that was on the news this week, which also Matthew broke, was all about Lee Kershaw from Wakefield, who's ended up also taking on a second job just to make ends meet. How much pressure financially is everybody under, do you think, in this? For some of the players, they've needed this restart, and obviously they're under furlough as well, so most of them, or you suspect. Will we see more players being lost, do you think? Have you heard any stories of that?
The sport will lose more players, or Super League will. Whether it loses them to Rugby Union or to the NRL, I think that's Rugby Union or the NRL. Yes, certainty. The reality is that for a lot of Rugby League players, it's not brilliant living, as proven by that Lee Kershaw case. And if there's cuts coming, and it's just they're going to move. You can't. The reality is, being a professional athlete is a short career. I know that fans, always bemoan the lack of loyalty, but if you put yourselves in their shoes, you've got 40 grand on the table here and 60 grand on the table there. Where would most people go in any walk of life? I work for League Express. If League Weekly offered me 60 grand a year and I were on 40 grand at League Express, I'm not on 40 grand. I wish I was. Would I think twice about doing?
No, you wouldn't. There's not a chance.
Of course I wouldn't. So why do we expect Rugby League? So why do we expect Rugby League players to do it? I just don't. And the reality is, cuts are coming. Some clubs are wanting to push them through to next year. Can you blame them for looking for a change in profession? I don't think you can. Not in the slightest.
No, but particularly in the championship sort of level as well, Matthew. Like, for the money those lads get paid, you would just stick to your other career. You wouldn't put your body through it for the limited amount of money that are available there. Like, you do see a lot of old players that are crippled and can hardly walk after the punishment they've taken throughout their careers, and they will get to a point where you're just like, do you know what? I'm not doing that for the money that's on the table. It's just not worth it.
No, well, this is the thing. You have some players in the championship who are part time, and they might earn somewhere between 10 and 20 grand playing part time. Now, for them, they probably think that's a nice little side earner. They're doing something they love. They've got another job. They get a good salary. But you go down and you get to a lower club in the championship, and you get to League One, and a lot of them are on appearance money. They might be on 5-6 grand basic. You just wonder. Wouldn't you? You risk injury, which then, depending on what line of work you're in, may affect your ability to work. And you do have to start wondering whether it's worth it. I think you find that when they get to that level, they're playing for the love of the game and for no other reason, to be honest. I don't think the finances really make a great deal of difference. So, again, if the cuts continue in Championship and League One, the drop-off will be even higher. The saving grace for them, potentially, those clubs, is that you're probably going to get a lot of reserve grade lads at Super League clubs dropping out of their systems because reserve grade is not the same. So they will probably look to snap up all those kids and give them an opportunity to carry on their careers playing at what's still a pretty decent level. But it's not an ideal situation.
You see, give it a time span of, say, 3 or 4 years. Could you actually see League One actually existing?
There's some of the clubs will end up going bust off the back of this, lower down the ladder, unless they get some form of real financial help. Like, I'm sort of doing the maths now. Like Whitehaven, they'll be really struggling massively. Like, there's no way around that. And you do wonder, like, they've had financial trouble in the past, as a lot of clubs at that level. You do seriously wonder what might happen to them in 2 years sort of time. Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to argue that. So
bring it on.
Right. We look at where Championship and League One clubs are at the minute, and not all, but a lot of them. All the staff are furloughed. They've no overheads. They don't own grounds, so on, training facilities. They're still getting all the Sky money. Do the maths. They're earning money at the minute. Why do you think half of them don't want to go back? Because they can sit, not playing rugby, not paying anyone and getting Sky money. They're all quids in. Not all of them, but a lot of them will be making money at the minute. And what will happen, and I can guarantee you this is what will happen, and I don't blame the clubs for this, but I don't think it's right. What they will do is they'll start talking about building war chests and safeguarding the future of the club, that sort of thing. What that is translation for is we've actually made some money this year because we've not had to pay anyone. We've been getting all Sky's money. but we might have loads of problems next year because we have to refund season ticket holders and commercial sponsors. What that is a plea, a subtle plea for season ticket holders to show faith and loyalty to the club and not ask for season ticket money back. Same to commercial sponsors who, you know, at that level are predominantly local businesses who normally are fans of the club. That's what that is. Now, I can't guarantee to you that what the figures will be on fans not asking for money back and so on and so forth. But if say 67% don't ask for refunds, then they've made all this money this year, crowds back in next year, they'll be better off. So for me, I'm not sure. I don't buy the rhetoric that clubs at Championship and League One level are going to drop off. I just don't. I don't see it, to be honest.
Has there been any grants from the Sport England or the RFL towards these local clubs?
Nothing from Sport England. Sport England have helped community-wise, but the RFL loan is for Championship and League One. Clubs. So they got that 16 million. I believe a few clubs have applied for loans now, but as far as I'm aware, but I don't pretend to know every club, but the only clubs I've heard that apply for loans are from Super League, not from Championship and League One. Which again,
they've got bigger overheads as well, haven't they?
Yeah, well, you know, a lot of Super League clubs, they own their own ground. They've still got reduced, but they've still got the running costs of that. With them coming back and they're going to be paying for testing, so on and so forth. You know, the costs are going to be there. But for Championship and League One clubs, if they don't play for the rest of the year, I just don't. They should all be quids in.
I reckon that's the point of the argument. I mean, they've had discussions today, haven't they, about potentially restarting. Do you reckon that is predominantly the main point of why there's such a big non-agreement between them?
It would be fair to say that if you look, I think Mark Campbell and Derek Beaumont at Featherstone and Lee, respectively, have been criticised for only thinking about themselves. And look, to an extent, I can see where people are coming from. I don't necessarily disagree. At the same time, I think the thing that got their backs up early doors was that there was so much apathy from the other clubs about getting the season back going. But the reason there was that apathy was because of this reason. They knew they were making money. If they don't have to play again this year and avoid all the testing, they're quids in. So that's what we're winding them up, because ultimately they should try and get back on the field. You know, you've got sponsors and supporters who you have sold stuff to, and you have a responsibility to try and deliver that to them. Now, if you can't do it, you can't do it. Fair enough. But their argument was, we can do it, it's just they don't want to do it. And I think that really got the backs up early on. Now it's a bit of a promotion relegation thing, which of course is pure self-interest, and they would, I don't think they deny that. You know, I just don't think they would. They're not going to try and pull the wool over your eyes. But you do have to ask the question now, having got all the information and it all being laid out: is it viable logistically and financially to get back on the field? Financially, they will, you know, Beaumont, Campbell, and the rest who were on the side of going back will cry wolf, not cry wolf, but cry till the cows come home. That yes, it is financially viable, because all that money they've saved in the last couple of months will pay for testing and everything else. But the others will argue it's still not financially viable, and the logistics and the safety of testing players who are part-time and probably working elsewhere. You know, they might be teachers who work in schools, they might be working in construction, they could be doing whatever. You know, is it safe and is it practical to be able to sufficiently test these players and make sure everyone's safe? So that's kind of where the debate's at now.
It's an interesting point, that, because if you don't have, if the Championship and League One just stop now for the rest of the year, you kind of think there's not been that much of a season already in terms of it. Would that make an impact? Obviously, yeah, they'd be looking at season tickets and everything, clubs and stuff like that. But do you guys think that, without sounding horrible, it wouldn't make that much of an impact if the season didn't carry on in the lower leagues?
I think if it does carry on, you have to uniform a decision for me, and it has to be blanketed. If there's no relegation from Super League, there should be no promotion and relegation all year, in my opinion. Now, obviously, that would annoy the likes of your Derek Beaumonts and things down at Lee, but you can't have it both ways. You can't have no relegation, but even if them still want to go up, it has to be a sport-wide decision, which I presume they're working on at the moment. But it'd be interesting to see what they do with the sort of logistics of it, as Matthew said. It's not just the testing as well. Like, obviously, most of the lads in Championship League One have got other jobs. Now you're talking possibly midweek fixtures to get caught up. Teams travelling home, for example. Like, say if Whitehaven played Sheffield away on a Tuesday night, they'd be getting home.
No chance.
They'd be getting home at 2:00 in the morning and have got work at 5, 6 o'clock the next day. That sort of thing is just not possible. And then all kinds of stuff off the back of it, like competition integrity, where teams could have a really strong team on a Sunday, but struggle to make 17 on a Tuesday and things like that.
It's like a catch-22, isn't it? It's almost not. It almost makes sense to not carry on, isn't it? I know it sounds horrible and clubs would suffer, but it makes sense for them not to play on. I think that's my view. I don't know.
What have they played in the Championship? 4 games, 5 maybe.
Is it? I think it's 5. The problem is the fans, isn't it? You go back to the community side, and for a lot of fans, it's not just Super League level, Championship League One. It's what they live for. I know that sounds a bit cringy, but they live.
Well, it is. A lot of people live for that weekend out. That game day on a Friday or a Sunday or whatever it is. That's the highlight of a lot of people's weeks.
Of course, So if you take that off them, it has a bigger impact than you probably think. Even though at that level it is a smaller group of people, it still has an impact on their lives.
Yeah.
It's like I think I said right at the top of the show. This isn't a perfect situation. There are no perfect solutions. We have to, as a sport, the sport cannot try and find perfect solutions because there just isn't one. It's finding the best one. What is the best one? You could argue it all day, to be honest.
Still
Everyone
get an
has different
answer.
opinions. No, well, no one's right, no one's wrong.
Yeah.
You get 50 people in a room and then everyone's got their own little opinions on how it should be done this way, that way. And, it's like I say, there's no perfect way to do it.
Now, another announcement this week was a certain return of a Ginger Warrior, a fellow Ginger Warrior, to our shores, Mr. James Graham, who is coming back to St Helens, we believe. I think it's pretty much got nailed on. Gentlemen, is he going to have how much of an impact will these next few months, these final few months in playing rugby league, how much of an impact at St Helens will he have?
Well, I personally think that although he's obviously not the player he was, he's not got the engine that he used to have. He's made 420 odd metres in the last 3 games since the resumption of the comp over there. I mean, that's not bad going over 3 games. So 420 odd metres. And if he can do that for 2-3 games at a time for St Helens and then try to peak towards the end of the year, he's a great replacement for Luke Thompson.
Good point, because he's very much...
And with him knowing it's his last season as well, because I think he's going back over to work for Fox next season. He'll be wanting to give it his all. And he's a competitor, he's a fierce competitor. And he's one of the best players I've seen play for the Bulldogs in the last 10, 15 years. And I hope he actually, even though I'm a Leeds fan, I wouldn't begrudge him a grand final win to go out on, especially after all the losses they had in that 6-7 year stretch where he lost 6 grand finals in a row. Yeah.
It's an interesting one. Do you think how much persuasion did it take for him to come over, do you think? Did you guys
not much, I wouldn't have thought.
Couldn't put the red V on for 6 months, I think.
Pretty much, yeah. I don't think it would have took a great deal of persuading, to be honest. So let's be honest, he's not fully spent, but kind of spent. But if he's 70% of what he was 5 years ago, it's still good enough to make quite an impact in Super League, to be honest. Whether or not he'll have the same impact as Luke Thompson, I'm not entirely sure. Well, obviously, it's a running theme on this podcast. I'm a bit of a fanboy of his, to be honest. I think he's one of the top 5 in the world in his position. Probably won't quite reach them levels of importance for the team, but he will do a job.
But I think his attitude in his last 3 games is probably known as coming back home since Thompson signed for the Bulldogs. And he's put everything into those last 3 games for the Dragons. And he's been averaging, 160 metres a game over that period. That just shows his mentality and the fight that he's got. I think it's only positive for Super League for the next 6 months and St Helens themselves.
What great entertainment he's been over the years, though, hasn't he?
Awesome.
Even as Leeds fans, when when him and Bailey had that Punch and Judy show going every time we played them, it was absolutely brilliant to watch, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I was watching the World Cup final just a few weeks ago. Actually, I've never actually seen it back on telly since the night, really. And when he was shouting over at the referee about Cameron Smith being an effing cheating, see you next Tuesday and stuff like that. Just one, he was right, and two, he's just heart on his sleeve, wasn't he? He was great entertainment to watch.
He's definitely been one of the best players in a England shirt, to say the least, Jammer. But I think for an impact player, he was one of the best, wasn't he? I mean, the fact he was almost playing dummy half a few times, wasn't he? That was one of his skill reps, wasn't he? He could literally change games in
Take the line on, just before it hits the line, that ball behind to the half-back run onto the full-back, that was one of the big plays for the Bulldogs, and we always joked at the Bulldogs fans that he was literally our best seven, because, it was that good. He could do the hard meters, but he also set up a lot of plays for his outside guys as well.
Matthew, would you say if we had to pick our pack for England from the last 10, 15 years, would he be an automatic selection?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, don't even think. Yeah.
Not a question, is it?
Not unless you say to that. Yeah, God, isn't it no brainer?
Yeah.
He'd be probably the first, wouldn't he?
Oh, easy, yeah.
I
put him ahead as Peacock, and as a Leeds fan, it might not go down well, but I think he's been the best prop in the world consistently over the last 10, 15 years. When he was at Saints, he was good, and he proved it when he went to the NRL, just how good he actually is.
The thing is, he's such a likeable player, because you see how much he wants to win, and the way he goes about it, there's not a backward step. He's so passionate. He's the sort of player you can get behind, isn't he? In terms of England and trying to break out onto the mainstream, he should have been built up so much more just because of the way he handles it. Goes about his business on the field. He's that guy that you can get behind as a casual supporter. You could watch him and go, God, you don't always get that with rugby players, do you? So
you could. When they'd lost, when they'd won, he was always the happiest one on the pitch, and when they'd lost, he was like the kid whose mum had to stop him crying on the sideline, because that's how much he cared. He wanted to win that much that he was, every time he didn't, he was absolutely fuming.
Well, it shows how valued he was over there, because the Bulldogs put on a goodbye message to him today on their social media. And he's not played for the Bulldogs for 3 years. So the fact that they've put a goodbye message on social media to him shows just how much of an impact he made on the Aussies.
Didn't he make some kind of sacrifice where he give a load of money back to the Bulldogs to cancel his contract and move on for their salary cap? Was there something like that?
Yeah, well, there's been massive salary cap problems. So I think that's right. Yeah, that's when he went to the Dragons. I think that's how it came about.
I just hope now he's coming back to Super League that they build it up right, because what really should happen now is that for 6 months they try and build some new rivalries. And some of those new, so as an example, the guys at Huddersfield, you've got Matty English and Oliver Wilson, who they've done the Polar Bears, who have some sort of resemblance to James Graham, or you could almost see them as the new or wannabe James Graham. Just hope that when Huddersfield play Saints, to make a big deal out of it and try and give a bit of a rub to those guys, the next ones, because we don't market players well enough, do we? There are some unbelievable players in Super League.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
But because they play in Super League, you don't think they're that good. But actually, they're brilliant. And it's because we don't do enough to build up these guys.
Well, I've said for years that I don't think that the quality is... The game's not as quick, it's not as fast, but I think it's more the coaching side of it that causes that, not the actual player side of it. I mean, their high-end players are better than our high-end players. But I think the pack, the people in the middle, just as good here as what they are over there. And I've always said it's the coaching side of things.
That's why that. Yeah, I'm with you. I did Backchat a couple of weeks ago. We had Lee Breeze and Paul Sculthorpe on talking about this. They were going on about we don't. Scully was strong on it. We don't coach players to look up and to play what's in front of them and to to kick over the top. You know, it's all structure. But that doesn't allow for your flair players, your flamboyant players, to do what they're capable of. And I do think over here we're a bit behind in terms of coaching and allowing the players to do that. But even over there, how many players now do you see with the box full of tricks? You just don't really do.
No, there's not that many. No. Kellen Ponga's the one that stands out when you think of that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the game is too defensive orientated now, and it doesn't make for a good spectacle. You know, everything's about yardage, positioning, and good defence, which there is an art to, no doubt. You know, if you're a pure fan, but for more casual fans or fans who, you know, enjoy entertaining game, the current style of play doesn't really make for that.
Well, I've had this argument with a few people as well. I've had this argument with a few people who say that the standard of Super League now isn't anywhere near as good as what it was 10, 15 years ago. Now, I argue that it is better. I think it is better now, personally. But what they do, they see entertainment. So the defences were terrible. In the mid-2000s to early 2010s, defences were awful. So you saw people throwing it about, making breaks, and to a lot of people, that shows that it's a good game when it wasn't. Nowadays, it's harder to break defences down. And I think the bottom teams now would stuff the bottom teams from back then. So I think as a whole, the league's got better.
Yeah. It's one of the things that annoys me about rugby league, that, you know, there'll be a game on Sky and it'll be 42-36, and the commentators go, "What a fantastic game!" And it's not really.
Give me a 10-8 game.
Defences have been absolutely awful. The tries have been too easy to score. I mean, I much prefer like a really tight defensive game. I mean, one of the best games of rugby league I've ever seen in our country was a playoff semi-final between Leeds and St Helens at Knowsley Road. I think it was 2007, and it finished about 8-6 to St Helens. And it was,
I think, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, and it was absolutely enthralling.
And Matt Gidley held Brent Webb up with about 5 minutes left. Brent Webb looked like for all money was going to go over and score, and Gidley's wrapped him up, pulled him over, and that's what won them the game. But it was just a great defensive game all the way through, and both teams threw everything at it. And you know, that's the side of the game that we needed. That's what we need to market, not the games where it's, you know, 38-32 or, you know, 28-26. To me, it shows poor defensive capabilities.
Sorry for going where we're going, Thomas. Oh, I was just going to ask.
I just thought Johnny hit the nail on the head when he said the entertainment's not as good as it was. I agree, but the quality is better. But people want entertainment, and unfortunately, better quality equals better defences. Better defences doesn't equal better entertainment. No.
That's why a lot of people think the NRL is boring.
Yeah, 100%. It's like Wigan under Sean Wayne, right? For me, that's one of the best teams I've ever seen play in Super League. But people hated watching them because they were boring. The last one they won under Sean Wayne against Warrington, and they were unbelievable. I've never seen a team defend as well as that. But people didn't like it because it wasn't entertaining to watch.
Well, that was Michael Maguire's team, wasn't it, as well? You know, it was the same kind of tactics. It was, you know, big up front and then play the game tough. And they've got set players. They've got two runners every time, and they play the ball to Tompkins, who gets the ball to the winger, and that's how they score the tries. They just do it well and do it quick. But it's not that entertaining to watch.
Being the Halifax fan that I am, they put on their YouTube page the 1987 Challenge Cup final, which is the last time Halifax won anything of any sort of importance. Which, I wasn't alive to see, which was quite upsetting. But, I watched the game, the full game, and my dad's going, these were the days, and I'm watching, like, oh, it's all, and he's going, don't make players like more who could split a defence in half. And he, like, when it tries, he just runs through. I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
That hole. Like, come on. Like, I just, but he didn't get it. He didn't get it. He was like, no, players are so much better back there. I'm like,
no,
I'm not buying it.
I'm with you on that one, yeah.
I just don't see it.
No. Obviously, you got players back then who could make it easily nowadays and be superstars. But in general, the standard wasn't anywhere near as good as what it is now.
That's why Cat. It was I shouldn't say this on a podcast with Leeds fans, but it was such a shame that Castleford didn't win the grand final, because that year they played the game, and with the ball they were unbelievable. I firmly would have completely. They were attack orientated, and they blew everyone away until the grand final. So now the stigma is you can't win. The stigma is still there that good defensive teams win grand finals. And
it's the thing with Powell as well, isn't it? You know, Powell's never won a final. He's been in quite a few finals with Featherstone and Cass and never got over the line with them. It's like you can coach good teams in the season, but when it comes to the big games, there's always something about the game plan that doesn't quite suit how big games are played.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned, when you going back to what you mentioned before about structure, though, I mean, that's the ultimate case study in it for me, was that season Luke Gale was absolutely unplayable. And then he pulls the England shirt on and Bennett just coaches, you know, all life out of him. Structured, rigid, kick it here, kick it there. He didn't have that, just go.
But this is what's interesting. So I got into Darryl Powell sort of educated me a little bit on this, because I said, you've got this really off the cuff style of attack. He's like, no, it wasn't Darryl Powell, it was Luke Gale himself. I spoke to Luke Gale about it, and he went, you're kidding. Oh, what do you mean? He went, no, that Castleford team is the most structured attacking team I've ever played in. And I went, what do you mean? And like, no, that's the most structure I've ever played in my entire life. Like, everything was a formula. Everything was a play. Hardy, basically, to put it into simple terms, the way they attacked that left edge, he always had the same four options. It was either the back rower, who on the left side at the time it wasn't McMeekan. McMeekan was playing on the right.
Yeah. Holmes.
Was it Ollie Holmes? It might have been Senny Lefebvre. Whoever it was, he had the back rower that he could go for. He could go to Hardacre out the back. He could go to Shenton, or he could go to Eden. Every attack was the same. They built it so that he had four options.
And I think they made Eden look better than he was as well.
His job purely
catch the ball
was to get the ball, look at the defence to see how they'd set up, and whatever they'd set up for, he'd pick the other option.
Yeah.
That was it. So if they jammed in over the top to Eden, if one had pushed in into Shenton, draw the man. If no one had pulled in past the back rower, if they kept it fairly tight, they tend to go to Hardacre to wait for him to make a decision in defence again. So he said it was the most structured attack he's ever played in.
That makes you wonder how he's coping at Leeds thing. I mean, unless we've kind of got... Anyway, but that's...
No. I think Agar's brought in a lot of structure to Leeds. Yeah. I think we look a lot more structured now than we have done ever in the last 20 years of Super League. We've never been a structured team. I mean, McDermott brought in a good defensive structure, but there was still a lot of off-the-cuff play as well. And that's because he learned under Tony Smith, who was a very flamboyant, off-the-cuff type of coach. That's how I see that anyway. But I think this Agar team looks as structured as I've ever seen a Leeds team.
Yeah. But it makes you wonder, like, how many of the coaches in Super League now do a good job in the NRL?
Hard to tell.
I know it's a very tough question to ask, but could you see the likes? I mean, obviously we've had a couple of guys who've come over from the NRL or assistant jobs. Could they go back and do a job over there? I mean, there have been rumours of Wayne, our England coach, maybe going over for St George.
I don't think Wayne's tactics would work over there. I think he'd get penalised to death and it'd kill the teams. Just the way that Wayne's teams play. The good teams, he knows how to coach, but he likes it tough, and you don't get away with that in the NRL.
No, they were supremely good in line defence, weren't they? But the problem is with attacks over in the NRL, when they get on the line, if they don't score, they force a repeat set.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't do it forever.
I mean, if you look in England, I can only count 3 very good coaches in the last 15 years, and that's, 10 years really. Holbrook, Michael Maguire, and Trent Robinson. Robinson made that very average Catalan team that Walters had, made them into a competitive team. Didn't they beat us in the playoffs when he was coach there?
Yeah. I think so.
Maguire turned Wigan around, made them into like we're saying, a very good Super League team. They won how many grand finals with them? Was it 2?
Oh yeah,
I think so.
And then Justin Holbrook came in, and he's made Saints, who were pretty average under Cunningham. They've made them into a team that plays like an NRL team. I mean, that last season, I've never seen a Super League team play anywhere near at the pace that Saints did. I mean, they make the drive up, they get tackled, and they've played the ball by the time the defensive line hasn't even got back. It's not even got back 10, and they've already played the ball, and that's what made them so good. Helps when you got Thompson and Walmsley as well, but he made them a good team, and that's what I was saying about coaching earlier. There's not many coaches that are that good to make a team better. And those, well, 2 of them, Maguire went over and made Souths good. Robinson has proven that he's up there with Bellamy and Bennett as far as coaches go in the NRL. And then it's just to be seen now whether Holbrook can do anything with Gold Coast.
There's the old saying that. So there's the old saying that you can't polish a turd. We'll find out if Holbrook can now.
Yeah. It'll take a good 12, 18 months before you even start seeing improvements there with that squad they've got.
There's the odd time with them, mind.
Yeah, there is, but they just don't have the players. The players, they've got an aging squad.
If I was in charge of a club over here, I'd never ever. Sorry, I lost you all then. I don't know what happened. Just going to say, if I was in charge of an English club, I would never employ an Australian coach.
You wouldn't?
No, and the reason is it's all down to recruitment. If you look at the lifespan of Aussie coaches over here, they don't tend to last very long.
No.
Whether it be because they want to go back to the NRL, or they just want to go back for personal reasons, or they come over and they just won't do that well. So
yeah.
if you go through the clubs, right, Castleford got Darryl Powell, longest serving coach in Super League. Look where they were, look where they are now. That's all been built on one coach having a plan for 7-8 years. If you go to Salford, Ian Watson got some consistency, got some longevity in a coach, takes them to a grand final. You then look at I'm trying to think of other,
like James Ford at York, for example, a bit further down.
You can go lower down. Richard Marshall at Halifax, they went, they had all those years and they punched above the weight. You can go through it. You can go through it. The look at a bit earlier than this, but Paul Anderson, Huddersfield.
Amazing job there, to be fair.
The foundations, don't get me wrong, were built by Tony Smith and then Nathan Brown. But Anderson went in there and he won the league leaders. Neither of those 2 did. But again, he was there for several years. Now, if you could guarantee me that I could get Justin Holbrook for 5 years, don't get me wrong, I'd take Justin Holbrook.
Yeah.
But the reality is it doesn't often happen. And if it does happen, it's normally because they're not that good and they can't get back to the NRL. And then Lee Radford at Hull's another. They won 2 Challenge Cups under him.
I can't believe Radford's gone to Union in America. I just think that's a wasted talent. I know it sounds. I can't believe he ain't got a job in the league somewhere.
Chasing the American dream. I mean, I suppose he's been given an opportunity. The wage can't be that bad if he's moving over there. He's got a chance to. I mean, he's been in a high-end rugby league job for how many years now? He probably just wants a little bit of a break, try a different lifestyle over there, and make some money out of it as well.
It's also very hard for British coaches to get gigs over here. Like, what gig could he go to, Lee Radford?
Yeah.
There's not really anything out there.
You'd just be waiting around for somebody to get sacked on the lower end, and then hopefully apply for that and get it.
But the other issue, I mean, I take Paul Anderson again as an example. Paul Anderson won the League Leaders Shield with Huddersfield in 2013. Took him to 3 playoff semi-finals, I think.
A couple won it. He got them there nearabouts.
Long story short, he got sacked by Huddersfield, and he hasn't been able to get a Super League coaching gig since.
No.
That for me is nuts. Look at what he did there. You'd think that he'd be the first person that people are looking at, but there's a culture at a lot of clubs over here that you go Australian. So Lee Radford will be in the same position. If I'm trying to think off the top of my head, where could you see a coach being sacked and Lee Radford getting the job?
Not at the moment.
Well,
but say a coach walked from any Super League club, anyone you want. Could you see Lee Radford being offered the job at that club.
They'd look to Australia.
The majority would.
Maybe if Wolf had left Huddersfield. Is Wolf?
Maybe.
Yeah, that's probably the only one.
But again, you look at Huddersfield's history of coaches. Tony Smith, Australian.
Yeah.
Nathan Brown, Australian. Paul Anderson, okay. Brickstone, Australian. Sam Wolford, Australian.
Yeah.
So, would they go for Lee Radford? History.
Unless I think they've learned a lesson. There's been some very average appointments there as well.
And the big one in all of this, I can't believe I've not mentioned, given I'm speaking to a bunch of Leeds fans, is Brian McDermott.
Yeah.
Most successful leader of Super League, came under a British coach, staying at a club for a long time. Don't get me wrong. Again,
I think it's the other stuff with him, isn't it? I think he's a deeply unpleasant human sometimes, by all accounts.
I just don't think he's a people person. I mean, if you look over the other side of the world, Wayne Bennett comes across the same, but then when he's actually in with a group of players, they do like him and get on with him. It's not everybody's cup of tea. You don't get along with everybody, but
the media hate him.
Yeah, and that's it.
Hate him, but I actually quite like the bloke because I think he's hilarious.
I was doing a thing the other week, and there was somebody from the Rugby League media who was this discussion thing, and he was saying like one journalist had gone up to him in a press conference and asked him a question, and basically Brian McDermott just went, "No, I'm not talking to you," and that was it. And he just gave him really cold answers, and basically I think Peter Smith was like the next journalist, and he walked straight over to him and gave him pretty much the same answer that this guy wanted. Literally just pretty much cut him out, and yeah, he doesn't have a good reputation with the press.
Well, I loved it at the start of the season when he actually didn't turn up for a press conference because nobody come to get him. That made me laugh.
So the way that the press conferences were generally, if it's a West commentator at the game will lead the press conference because Radio Leeds prefer that their reporter has their voice on the interview that they play out, but rather than pull them to one side, you just do it all at once. So whenever I did Leeds, I'd be leading a Brian McDermott press conference, and everyone would be like, "Glad you're here," because no one dared ask him a question. So I didn't mind, but he honestly, I could find you so many clips where I asked a perfectly reasonable question and he just gives it to me, just a real snotty answer. My mum absolutely hates him because like he bullies you, and I'm like, but he got a point where I'm like, well, I'll just give it you back. I just try and make him look silly. I remember Leeds played Widnes in the Challenge Cup and they won. It was at Widnes. I think Widnes mounted a little bit of a fight back later on, but they won. Anyway, I noticed that he had a plaster on his finger. So I thought, right, I'm getting him here. So just asking him questions. He'd been all right with me, to be fair. I said, "What's the plaster on your finger?" He just looked at me and he didn't expect that. He went, I opened a can of tuna and I cut my hand on the can of tuna. I went, "You did what? You cut your hand on it?" I thought, I've got him here. And I could see him. He was looking over to Phil Daly, the media manager. Like, what's going on here? And then, anyway, at the end of the interview, he just gave me a little smirk and walked off. And I thought, yes, he liked that because I gave him a little bit back. I think you come across people like that. You come across teachers like that, don't you? Just you for it. And I think Brian McDermott's like that. If you let him know that you're scared that he's going to give it you, then he'll give it you because he can sense it. But if you don't think you're bothered, well, he did it with me in the Sonny Bill Williams press conference, which did annoy me. So Sonny Bill Williams, Emirates Stadium, the world's media's there. So you just want things to go right, don't you? So my question to him was, what is it about Sonny Bill Williams that you admire? What talents he got that you admire? And he went, admire, and not admire the bloke, no admiration for him. And I thought, you don't need to say that, do you? It's so necessary to answer like that. And I thought,
I think he thinks that everyone's always trying to catch him out. That's the way it comes across like.
Yeah. maybe. But then I went out to Toronto last year when Halifax played, and I had a good chat with him, and you wouldn't have known.
Yeah,
It was like, but the cameras were on there.
Can you imagine
complex character?
I was going to say, can you imagine the phone call that Leeds had to make? Well, it probably wasn't a phone call, but the discussion of, sorry, Brian, you're sacked. Can you imagine how many bodyguards or like protection gear or people in that room when?
I don't think he'd kick off like that.
Do you know?
No.
I think he more than anybody knows it's a business, doesn't he?
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Do you know what he reminds me of here from what Matthew was saying? I don't know. Does anybody listen to the Peter Crouch podcast that he does?
Occasionally.
So basically, they've got this thing going on there now about anyone that's had an encounter with Roy Keane, as to basically either send a picture in or send a story in about when they meet Roy Keane. But for the listeners, if you haven't seen them, just type Roy Keane ice cream into Google, and you'll start off on the Twitter trail and find people who've sent in the photos when Roy Keane's been dead nasty to them. Sounds very similar to Brian.
This could be an interesting one. And if any listeners got any stories about where they've seen Brian McDermott on the travels, please let us know. If you've seen him like buying tuna or anything like that, please let us know. We'll
the thing is,
retweet.
So when Leeds played Barrow in the Challenge Cup at Headingley, they won like 70 or whatever. After the game, he did the press conference, walked out, and there were loads of Barrow fans there. So I was just typing up some I could hear it because the window were open. I couldn't believe it. I thought, what a great bloke. But then it just staggered me that he spent that much time with him. Crazy. Really complex character. I'd love to have a beer with him.
Yeah, I can imagine him being quite intrigued. Yeah, you can imagine he might not let himself go, but he might become more easier talk.
Just like to understand how he works. I'd love to get to know the bloke.
He's quite a deep bloke, isn't he? I've listened to it when he done the Our League podcast that he did. Yeah, he's done an interview on that, which was about an hour and a half long, about his days in the Marines and his upbringing and everything like that. He's quite a fascinating bloke, to be honest. It was quite a good listen.
Yeah.
So if you could interview anybody in the rugby league world, who would you interview right now?
Oh. Wow. Good question. Oh no. This sounds a bit arrogant, but I've interviewed a lot of, like.
Done it all. Don't need to do anybody else.
I did get a just before lockdown. Jonathan Thurston did a tour.
Yeah.
And I interviewed him after one, and that when I was waiting for him to sign everything off, there were like 5 minutes before, like, I'm just about to interview Jonathan Thurston. He's mental, right? So there was that, but same with Sonny Bill Williams a little bit. But I just think it's like any job, isn't it? Eventually, not the love for it wears off, but the novelty sort of.
Do you still find that some guys have like an aura about them though? Like that you'll interview some guys and it's just like chatting to anybody down the street, but then there's other guys who are superstars of the game and they've got something about them.
Kevin Sinfield gives that aura.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm interviewing Kevin Sinfield, which is rare actually, I don't often speak to Kevin, but he does give that, if you know what it's about, in terms of current players, no, not really.
Yeah,
not really. Yeah. None of them really give that off. I think the one that I always felt did have it was Ben Barber.
Ben Barber.
There was something about Ben Barber when you're interviewing him, you knew you were speaking to.
They're well trained over there as well, especially at the highest level like he played.
Yeah, for sure. Much better over here. I'll tell you anything.
So you mentioned the novelty of things, Matthew. Obviously you've been covering rugby league games for quite a long time now, and most people in their job have days where, do you know what, can't be arsed with work today. Do you ever get them when you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, I've got to go to Huddersfield and Salford, can't be arsed with that?
Never. Oh, well, no. That is I am lying to you there. Yes. Yes. And it was I want to say we're middle of February. So I get rotas through for Radio Leeds. In terms of League Express, I can tend to pick where I go. But I tend to go, I'll do a game when I'm doing Radio Leeds because it just saves me, if you don't have to work Thursday and Friday night, I won't. But JD, love JD, absolute champion bloke at Radio Leeds. Not a bad word to say about him. He sent me my rota for the start of the year and he'd given me back-to-back Thursday nights at Hull KR. Oh my God.
What time of year was it though?
Pardon?
What time of year was it?
This year it was February.
So you definitely don't want to be there.
They played Castleford one. I think it was Castleford on a Thursday night and Huddersfield on a Friday.
Yeah.
On back to back, and I just saw that, and I just devastated. Like that drive to Hull is horrific. Just nothing there, is there?
Boring.
Good views.
No. Once you get east of Leeds, it's just flat, isn't it, all the way? Until you get to that bridge. The bridge is about the only defining thing about the drive.
Honestly.
Even as fans, it's the worst ground.
Well, it gets even worse when you get there as well.
It's night. So it was the second time. So I think they played Huddersfield. They played Castleford on the Thursday, and then the week after they played Huddersfield on the Friday. And as I was driving to that, I was like, I do not fancy this.
It's just.
But I can honestly say, hand on heart, that I love my job. As cheesy and as cringy as that sounds, there is very rarely a day where I don't love what I do. I genuinely think that I'm very, very lucky to have the job that I do, to get paid to go watch games, to get paid to report on it in the week, and to actually consider a lot of these blokes now as friends. Like I genuinely am so lucky to have the job that I do. I think it does help because it can be hard. I'm not going to lie to you, it's non-stop. Like, my phone's going mental at the minute, and I've had someone say, have you got the bottle to report this? And so I'm kind of interested to know what that's all about now.
I want to know. Come on, let's have a look. What's it about?
A Loinersview exclusive.
I don't know.
Come on.
He wants me to ring him to find out. He wants to get my attention. But it is non-stop. But because I love rugby league so much, and because I love the job I do so much, I'm not bothered to be working. You know, like when I get invited onto a podcast, or if I'm asked to do something, I'll always say yes. Like,
yeah,
you're always welcome, mate.
I know it's made me sound like the biggest loser of all time, but I genuinely mean all of it. Genuinely.
Well, look, you still get paid for going to Hull KR.
I think 95% of people would take what you're doing as well. So you know,
made the most of it.
Yeah, and look, it's and I know that, and that's why people in the media, not so much rugby league, because all the people that cover rugby league, the main journalists, anyone who sort of resembles a media person in rugby league, are fans of the sport. You know, I could reel off every journalist which club we support. We support them when we were a child. You know, Gareth Walker, again, fantastic bloke, massive Rochdale Hornets fan. You could go through all of them. So I don't think, and I do think, look, I think the rugby league media gets some stick at times over here, and probably some of it's justified, to be fair. I think, you know, sometimes we maybe don't ask the cutting edge questions, or there is a tendency maybe not to dig as deep as maybe we could and should do as a collective. But I do think generally we do a fair job of covering the game and the issues that are going on. Albeit they sometimes make it easy for us with the arguments and wanting to give the 2 cents.
It's quite you do quite a decent job though, Matthew, in the way that nationally we scrap for column inches, don't we? In the main national newspapers, we do quite a decent job of getting what we can out there. But a lot of sports, for example, will be jealous of the fact that we have a really long-running and successful weekly newspaper that comes out. I know I look forward to the Rugby League coming out every single Monday. There's not a lot of sports that happen to have one of those going every week.
We have 2. You know,
yeah.
And I know League Weekly's not going at the minute. I don't know whether they're coming back or not. I mean, I assume they are. I've not heard anything. But you're right. You know, the trade papers over here do. I'm going to say this out as a word for them, but they do serve a purpose. They do what you find with the Nationals is they don't get the journalists are a lot better than you'd think they are, but because they'll file loads of stories, but they just don't get in paper, so therefore they don't get used. Which is a crying shame because some fantastic stories that they just don't get used. That's kind of where we have a niche because we're not held to column inches because all of us column inches go to rugby league.
Yeah.
So we can get everything out there that we possibly can, whether it be on the website or the paper. So yeah, you're right. I do think the sport is lucky to have the two, and I don't think. And again, I'm going to say this, man, people realise how much news they pump out. And I think you would only find out if you took them away and you were limited effectively to the Nationals and then a few websites who ultimately just copy what everyone else is saying anyway. You wouldn't really be as much news. I think there'd be a lot less news coming out. To be honest.
Well, how many pages are there roughly in the League Express?
So at the minute we've got 28. When the season's going and we've got match reports, it's 40.
But just 28 pages of news, that's a hell of a lot.
It's
weekly.
Yeah. It's a fair effort. It's a fair effort, and it's just a shame that the paper industry isn't what it was. It's not just rugby league; it's just life. Magazines the same, which is why we sort of try to make Total RL a bit prominent because it's just going. It's just hard. A lot of media companies are still finding it hard to make that transition but make money out of it because people have come to expect stuff for free, which can't blame them for coming to expect it for free because if you can get it for free, you're going to want it for free. Right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it can't last forever because then you can't pay the people who are writing the story, then there's nothing. It's in the media industry is in a bit of a transitional period there where it's the consumer and the producers haven't quite come to a compromise.
Are you looking forward to going to games and wearing face masks while you're reporting on them?
No, but I'm quite lucky because as most games that I'll be going to, I think I'll be doing the radio, and the radio aren't forced to wear the face masks. So, thank God.
You've done all right there.
Yeah.
Well,
have you seen one of the interesting things about when crowds get into stadiums and what have you? One of the criteria might be no singing, which was interesting.
Yeah.
There's singing's banned in church apparently.
I mean,
no, you say that, but in South Korea they had everything under control early on, and there was one woman who was a super spreader, and she went around all these churches in South Korea and spread it to over 1,000 different people. I mean,
yeah.
There'll be a big list of rules outside the ground, which 2 meters apart, mask on, strictly no singing.
Cowbells. We don't want them. Yeah.
Or if you go to Salford, just do as you've done before.
I was getting. This was explained to me this afternoon. So it's something to do with when you shout or when you sing. You spit. This sounds disgusting, but you spit and your fluid can travel 8 meters.
Oh,
it's droplet size as well.
Yeah.
When you project more, the droplets are bigger, so they've got more chance of containing.
No, so therefore that's why you can't sing and shout.
Yeah.
Because your droplets won't travel as far.
It won't really make any difference to Wigan fans, will it?
No, they'll be practicing their silent chanting.
It's
for
funny,
for those who are not watching. Yeah,
it's funny though. It's funny because a few of the championship clubs have joked to me. Well, with the size of our stadium and this fan base, we can social distance with everyone in here.
Huddersfield won't have any issues.
You could.
Well, do you know what?
They get that nature of Huddersfield, don't they?
I feel sorry for Huddersfield. I genuinely feel. No, I do because it's not their fault that the ground's too big for them.
Try the round.
It's not a dig. If they had a ground the size of Lee, it'd be perfect. It'd be perfect.
Yeah.
They get 5,500-ish Huddersfield, something like that.
6, 7, yeah.
Well, yeah, and then when we go, we take we used to take 5,000, probably now an extra 3,000. So it boosts it up to 7,000-8,000.
Unfortunately, the ground is too
Yeah,
big.
yeah,
It's not, and can you blame them for that? Probably not.
That's not their fault. Looks so bad. I mean, like if they played at Halifax's ground, they'd probably make a decent amount of noise in there.
Like they did.
Probably, but even the Shea is a 14,000 capacity stadium.
Yeah.
It's like with Halifax. People say to me, "Oh, it's great atmosphere at Halifax." Like, is it really?
I like Halifax. I think it's
Yeah,
good.
but is the atmosphere good? I'm not sure the atmosphere is good here.
I don't think the roof's helped. So the roof kind of slopes upwards away, so the sound escapes out, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, people always tell me they think the Shea is great. I'm like, I don't. I don't like watching rugby there at all, to be honest.
I think there's only genuinely, though, 2 or 3 clubs now that have got a good atmosphere.
Cass.
Hull FC.
No, I'd say Hull KR.
Hull KR. See, it's an awful ground. Wakey has an atmosphere where I sit.
But the biggest one for me, the loudest I think for the amount of fans have got, Salford. They make a hell of a lot of noise. They make so much noise, and there's only about 1,000 of them in there.
Salford, hand on heart, Salford is my favourite ground to go to.
They're a good set of fans. They're a good set of fans down there. I was at the playoff semi against Wigan last year in the Salford end. Mm-hmm. That was one of the best trips to Wigan I've had in a long time.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it was the loudest I've heard any set of fans.
But the thing is with Salford, yes, the crowds are big, but the stadium's small and the compact, and the roof's quite low.
Yeah, so it projects it out. Yeah.
Comparison, it's a belting atmosphere at Salford. Belting atmosphere, and it's great for facilities for the press. Like Headingley is the best. Salford's good. Salford's good. Honestly, can't knock Salford. Can't knock Salford in terms of the.
It must be the worst ground in the league to be a referee.
Oh my God! Now that is the one thing about Salford. In terms of abuse, they are horrendous. The refs, horrendous.
The ref's a funny shape every week, isn't he? Allegedly.
Yeah. Oh, but it's shocking. It's shocking. It's funny. This is one thing where I and other journalists tend to strongly disagree with fans, and it's the standard of reffing. We don't see an issue with the standard of reffing. Like we watch games, and the fans are going nuts, and we're just looking at each other like, "Well, what's up with them?" Like there'll be a blatant high tackle or holding down or whatever. The fans go nuts, and we're like.
I think a big problem is you don't realise, and I don't mean to disrespect to anybody, but a lot of fans don't know a lot of the rules, and that's where the biggest problem comes from.
Well, I earlier this year I ended up going as a fan to watch Halifax. They played Dewsbury on a Wednesday night. Now we're really looking forward to it, thinking, brilliant, I can have a few beers, live the dream here. And I was embarrassed. To be in with the fans because they were moaning and effing and blinding at the ref. And I would call in and like, that's a penalty. Ref would blow up, give a penalty. And everyone would go mad like, it's a blatant penalty. It's just so obviously a penalty. The fans are going nuts. My dad's next to me and I'm like, I am walking away in 5 minutes. I cannot. and then it got to a point where I'd say, I'd go, that's a penalty. And he'd blow against Halifax. Halifax is the most ill-disciplined team in history of existence. And he just wouldn't dare say it because he knew that I was going to berate him. and we were winding him up that I was saying penalty, and the referee would then subsequently blow. And then there was one time where I shouted it when it was in favour of Halifax, and the ref didn't give it, and he went nuts again. But yeah, genuinely.
Don't we all miss Russell Smith as a referee? That's all I'm going to say on that front.
He's got a nice life in Brisbane now, hasn't he? So, I know
he's living a dream. Well, anyway, gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure this evening, and we'll call it an evening, I'm afraid, guys. So it's been a much appreciated having you guys with us. So thank you, Johnny.
No worries. Anytime.
Thank you, Jordan.
Cheers, Loz. Same time next week.
Yeah, I think we'd best do, aren't we? And also, thank you very much to our special guest this week, Mr. Matthew Shaw. Thank you very much, young sir. And make sure you subscribe to us wherever you're watching or listening, and we'll have some more stuff for you next week. Hope to hear and see you then.
There's some more Leeds-based stuff.
And more Leeds-based stuff, of course. Goodbye.